What a week!
Right? Hello, everyone. We hope you're still alive and still with us and still sane. Maybe sanity is questionable at this point.
Yeah, that's out the window. That's gone, long gone. That stuff. I'm not
Who
really
can afford
sure.
it in this economy?
Seriously, I think isn't there a tariff on sanity at this point?
It's probably just a blanket ban. I'm sure it's in one of the 200 executive orders. Holy shit!
When's the executive order coming out that bans executive orders? Probably not anytime soon.
Biden probably should have taken care of that before he left office. But yeah. So there's.
Well, let's. How are you doing, Ember? We're here. We are. We're going to be short. We're going to be short of Bree this evening. So Carly's in theory coming. So
I've heard that rumor.
Check in. Yeah.
It should be good. There's a lot going on as per usual. A lot of the stuff that's been happening in the last 48 hours ish has been sports related. So that's, not my field, but
well, I think, it's everybody's field, really. I mean, it's the gateway drug to transphobia.
It really is.
Bathrooms,
sports,
locker rooms, changing rooms. That is like, that's the drill. And, we were talking before the show about the whole flood the zone thing, and the fact that this is not a surprise. I am shocked at the number of people that say, "Oh, they're not going to really do that." Yeah, they are. They fucking well are, man. And
right.
It's just.
The Schadenfreude helps a little bit. As we were discussing before the show, there's posts all over the internet on every social media about people saying things like, "I voted for Trump and now my wife got fired just because she's a woman."
Yeah.
That's what
Riley Gaines' husband is getting deported. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, you literally asked for this.
Yeah,
so
you literally asked for it. You literally voted for it. You didn't believe us when we said this is going to affect you. You may think it's only going to just be us, but it's not. It's going to affect everyone. And letting Elon Musk get a hold of the treasury records for everybody's social security number, address, bank information, etc., and so forth. What? Yeah.
Yeah, that's another fun one. Although there are probably a few surprises in there. I mean, my credit rating is negative at this point, so if he tries to use it, it's not going to help him much. I just, why though? Yeah, there's a lot. The political situation is just absolutely crazy, and it's like everything is a smokescreen for everything else, and we have to second guess what it is that they're trying to distract from, what it is they're actually trying to accomplish, while also not dying from the avalanche of bullshit landing on every group you can think of simultaneously. Planes falling out of the sky, the country's on fire, and everybody's getting fired from everything. It just... Hey,
I was just I was just speaking with someone who's Canadian, and she just got laid off in Canada. She's in a which I don't know what the company was, but apparently they made bullets, right? And so they had to lay off a bunch of people so they could afford the gunpowder. That's what she was saying. It's like, wait a minute. Then who's going to make the bullets?
Yeah. That's
a little weird.
I'm not sure that works, but I mean, it's not not a unique thing. You know, we were hearing from Josie and Lux earlier today on Takis that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the nonprofit organizations have had to be doing layoffs because their federal funding is basically gone. And
Right.
what can you do? You know, I mean, you know, we can like do small dollar donations, which are super important for every organization you want to support. It anywhere you can put a spare dollar, send it to the Trevor Project, send it to ACLU, because my goodness, they've got their work cut out for them already, and we're only like 2 weeks into this fucking presidency. But we can only do so much, especially since most of us, partly because of our minority status, tend to be very poor.
Or we spent our life savings becoming who we are. That's the other thing.
Trying to access medical care. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it's
well, that's
and
where I'm at. You know, it's like, oh well, gee, wish I had that money, but I don't. But at least I've got me. I got that going for me. So all right.
yeah, that's a big
But,
plus. I mean, you know, we do our what passes for health insurance here in the United States is an absolute fucking joke.
mm-hmm.
I've got sudden additional hospital bills to deal with, and I just got a bill the other day that apparently the dental work I had done back in September, I could check my log, but whatever. None of it's covered. It was supposed to be covered. According to my plan, it's covered. It's not
Oh,
covered.
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm like, awesome.
yeah.
So yeah, even the it's not just gender care stuff. Although you're on your own for that too, but
Oh yeah. Well, and none of my expenses in that regard were covered at all during transition. You know, all out of pocket. So poof.
mm-hmm.
Where is that fire I'm supposed to throw the money into? Oh, it's over there. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the plus side, if inflation continues at present rates, it'll be cheaper to burn the money than pay for heating oil, gas, fuel, whatever it is you used to heat your home with.
Yeah, that's at least heat's included in my rent. It's not worried about
That's a
that.
big plus being in the Northeast. Yes.
Yeah, it is. It is. So yeah, it's anyway. What do we got going on here? I know you have a segment that we're gonna we'll run that. Again, I'm expecting Carly to show up at some point. We'll be talking about the NCAA and the Title IX executive order. But I think you've got something, or that Representative Zoe Zephyr did.
Yeah.
On
Just
that?
today. Of course, Montana, like many red hat states, is trying to ban trans women from being in sports. And Representative Zephyr, as you can imagine, had some words that just came in today. So it wouldn't be part of good news anyway, because the sports stuff doesn't go into my segment, and this
All
is
right.
very sports related, but also because it's not exactly good news. It's great to see Representative Zephyr kicking ass, but I mean, if the bill fails because of it, then it'll become good news. But the fact there is a bill, it just,
Yeah.
know.
Oh, I know. So what should we do? You want to run that, or do you want me to run
Yeah,
that?
we
How are we
can
going to do
we
this?
can take a peek at it and use it as a springboard for conversation.
Sure, that sounds great.
Yeah,
Let me get ye thing going here.
pushing the buttons.
Yeah, I got to push the button. I got to unmute. I got to unmute the thingy and get to the beginning of the drill, and then hit this in. See, technical operations going on here.
Live broadcasting. While we're working on
Live
that,
broadcasting, yes.
if you're new here, if you're watching us later, the channel's we're trying to grow. We need your help though. Subscribe, of course, to make sure you can join us later for future episodes. We're on every week, but also we need watch hours. Maybe watch some stuff. Maybe pop on one of the playlists while you're cleaning your room or doing homework or whatever the case may be. It helps. But also, please, please share the show. The algorithm does not like us. We're a very small channel, and we're talking about a very verboten topic, being trans in public. The algorithm does not like us. The only way people find this show is when other people share it. Anything you can do, all the button pushes you can do, it helps.
All right, I'm gonna roll the tape.
Woo!
Is there further discussion, Representative Zephyr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the body, unsurprisingly, this is a deeply personal bill to me, not only as a trans woman in this legislative body, but also as someone who, prior to my transition, was an incredibly high-level athlete. I have 5 state championships in wrestling to my name. I was a multi-sport athlete across high school on several state-level teams. And I want to take this moment to talk first about, to me, this bill's fundamental misunderstanding of trans people and trans bodies. You know, it is incredibly difficult to be a high-level athlete. It is even more so difficult to be a high-level athlete as a trans person. Trans people make up about 1% of the population. There are 525,000 student athletes. If trans people were represented proportionally, we'd see over 5,000 trans athletes in the NCAA. If trans people were dominating sports, as the claims suggest, we would see an order of magnitude more. But we don't. We see 10. Because it is incredibly difficult. It is difficult because of physiological reasons. The International Olympics Committee set out a recent report highlighting how trans women often underperform compared to cis women due to our transition. We have testosterone levels that are lower than our cisgender women peers often. It is a struggle, and I can speak to that personally as someone who went from a 5.5-minute mile pre-transition to a 9.5-minute mile post-transition. Bodies change, and trans people deserve to be in sports. I also want to highlight that this bill, to me, does not seem to be about fair competition, because we see this applied across all sports. We have seen this applied whether it is, wrestling, the sport I'm in, whether it is chess. We've seen sports bans on fishing, and no surprise to this body, but if I attach a vial of estrogen to a fishing rod, it does not make me a better fisher. We've also seen in executive office EOs targeting trans people and trans sports. The president has called us dishonorable liars and said trans people are un-American. To me, that highlights what is underpinning a bill like this. It is at its face an attack against trans people at the place where they deem trans people most susceptible to public pressure. I also want to say that this bill is not wanted by many cisgender female athletes, and we see that at the highest level in sports, from coaches in the WNBA speaking for the inclusion of trans women, from members of the U.S. women's national team fighting for the inclusion of transgender women in sports. At the highest levels, these bodies have invited trans people in. And in fact, if we look at a state like Minnesota, which has had some of the highest participation of trans women in sports, they have also seen the highest increase in cisgender girls participating in sports as well. Because when we fight for all women in sports, trans and cis, we raise the tide for all of us. Lastly, I want to talk about the real harm that this bill can do beyond just trans people. When we talk about enforcement, one of the things that was brought up in committee was a reference made to an Algerian boxer in this Olympics who was accused of being trans and was later found to be cisgender and was accused and put under immense public scrutiny. That's what these bills do. They allow for heightened scrutiny of all bodies. And what we saw in a news report just today was a soccer coach asking all 11-year-old girls to, quote, show him their genitals to confirm whether or not they were abiding by policies like this. That is the real risk of a policy like this. It does not help our students. It does not help children. It endangers them and puts them at risk of real predators from causing harm. Please vote no.
Is there further discussion?
Okay, so there's a lot to talk about there. Obviously, we've got a bit of echo going on.
We do have an echo going on.
Echo. Okay, I think we're good. Hopefully. Okay, so for clarity's sake, this was discussion surrounding Montana's House Bill number 300, which was introduced yesterday or the day before, something like that. And it basically redefines what counts as unlawful discrimination, and it specifies protections for race, creed, religion, sex, marital status, color, age, physical disability, national origin, mental disability, and a couple others. What it specifically and explicitly leaves out is, it says in subsection 2, for the purposes of this section, it is not an unlawful discriminatory practice to call another student by the student's legal name or to refer to a student by their sex. It is an unlawful discriminatory practice for an educational institution that operates the athletic facility, yada, 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 to permit a person whose sex is male to participate in an athletic program or an activity that is designated for females. And then it goes on and lists a bunch of other stuff that specifically excludes anyone assigned male at birth from anything that isn't specifically assigned male. So even though it specifically prohibits discrimination based on sex, the majority of the bill is discrimination based on sex. So that's what Representative Zephyr was talking about.
Yeah, and Representative Zephyr hit a number of points that we've discussed here about the actual medical things. What happens when you transition? You know, it's like but it's not going to matter. No matter how. You know, it's like arguing about God. You know, well, I believe this. Well, how do you know that? Well, because I believe it. And it's like, it's pointless. It's fucking pointless. You know, you point out the science out the window because, well, I just don't believe it. It's frustrating as hell. And I think, I'll be honest, I think that's why, again, we were talking about the gateway drug stuff. This is how you get to discrimination. This is how you get to bigotry. Never mind the camel's nose under the tent. It's so tremendously frustrating. I mean, when World Sailing did its ban, the president of U.S. Sailing sent me an email and said, I can't imagine how it feels. And my response was, well, try. You know, that's not doing me much good when you say, well, I can't imagine how that feels to you. It's like, well, I think if you put your thinking cap on, bud, you might be able to figure it out. It sucks. It's cruel. And it's based on nonsense. Thank you for Yes, thank you for attending my rant.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that as we've reported on before here, this is not the first time that Montana has tried to ban trans women specifically from sports. In 2021, they had a transgender athlete bill that was declared unconstitutional at the county level. In fact, they have not amended their state constitution. There clearly haven't been amendments to the federal constitution. And here they are passing another bill. Like I've said many, many times, but it bears repeating. Just because a bill is illegal does not mean they won't pass it. And it will still go into law until and unless someone challenges it. And even if you win in court and get it struck down, they can just pass another one without making any underlying changes. And also worth noticing, what is this even for? I mean, these people who keep proposing this shit, they talk about virtue signaling. There are 300 trans students in Montana, in the entire fucking state. Trans students. 300 of them. How many are athletes? That I don't have data on. But even if all 300 of them are athletes, what are we doing? Does the state have nothing else it could be working on, perhaps? It's literally, like Owen Morgan frequently says, it's the satanic panic over again. That's all it is.
Well, it's something very similar, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, so much of society, you know, involves respecting norms, right? Just because there is a constitution, the Soviet Union had one of the most perfect constitutions in the history of mankind. Did it matter? No. You can have the structure, but if you just want to just say, well, fuck it, you know, yeah, I know it says that, but you're going to Siberia anyway. It's lawlessness. Hey, Carly.
Hi.
I see Kitty.
I need Kitty
Carly,
tonight. I
That's
need
fair.
Kitty.
really? Yes.
And honestly, right after the show, I'm going right to bed because this has been a wild last couple days between the executive order, doing stories on the executive order, and then the breaking news we got about the NCAA 2 hours ago. I'll admit, for a person who is trans who loves sports, I'll admit I feel deflated today. I mean, Charlie Baker just screwed not only current collegiate trans athletes, but a whole host of young trans people who just want to play sports.
Yeah.
I mean, I find it interesting. The NCAA has been silent for 3 years. Going back to Leah Thomas, they've been reticent to make decisions. They've been reticent to speak. And now all of a sudden, they decide that now is the time when they're going to do something bold. And not something that's pro people and pro sports and actually pro women.
Mm-hmm.
They were just biding their time and waiting for the Trump train. And now they've opened the door to maliciousness and pettiness. For example, if you read Riley Gaines's Twitter, I know I'm dead naming X. She said, "Now we got to finish the job." Like I've got it right up here. She says, "We finished the job. Now they can work titles and honor from men who stole from deserving women." That's the whole thing. Nobody in the press pushed back on the misgendering. No one in the press pushed back on the official transphobia of the Trump White House. No one pushed back on that. And that leaves me feeling a bit defeated tonight.
You're muted, Steph.
Thank you. Not only did they not push back, but think over the course of the past year, at the New York Times specifically, their coverage of trans people and trans issues. Think of how they approach this. The story in St. Louis, their coverage of that whole thing. It was bad, and it's been bad. You really have to, it's when we look, tonight's show is going to be a train wreck. I apologize in advance. We all do, but it's been bad. The past couple of days have been just awful. And I'm with you. I'm with you, Carly. It's we just have, we saw it in the UK. We saw this 2 years ago in the UK when all of this stuff was really starting to ramp up. And we started talking then, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. As a matter of fact, the executive orders that are coming out now were actually proposed in 2018 in the last Trump administration, but they hadn't gotten the press drumbeat sufficiently high to get everybody scared to death of trans people, specifically trans women. But they worked the refs. They worked the refs, and they worked them expertly. And the press were either willing accomplices or silent. And the people we were counting on to actually back us up didn't say a word.
No, they did not.
Didn't say a word. The Republican Party spends what, $218 million?
I hear now it's 222.
222. Well,
that's just the official campaign. I mean, remember, Elon alone was giving away millions.
Correct. And Elon using his Twitter power was bashing his own goddamn daughter.
Oh yeah, his thumb was on the scale throughout it all.
So, I don't want this to necessarily be a bitch fest, but it kind of has to be a bitch fest. We've been saying this for months, even years in some cases, going back years. And here we are.
Yeah,
it was going to
exactly.
happen. It was going to happen. If you can't run a campaign, you get huge amounts of money, huge amounts of free press, self-generated press, with no one, not one major figure in the Democratic Party standing up to and full-throatedly saying, we support trans people.
They didn't even get the game that was being played against them. I mean, it wasn't just us, right? It was also Palestine. It was also the undocumented immigrants. The whole thing, the Republicans are standing up there saying, we believe some people aren't fully human and deserve to die. And people, big neon sign, nobody on either side bothered to call attention to that and said, hey, maybe this isn't the kind of people we want to be. Maybe this isn't the kind of nation we want to be a part of. Nope, they just avoided the topic. They just dodged. In the best cases, they dodged. We're going to comply with whatever the law says. And those, there were a couple exceptions, like AOC calling Nancy Mace's behavior gross and disgusting, which, is accurate, but
you know about her latest thing, right?
The not quite censure in the committee thing.
Oh, you mean Nancy Mace?
Yeah.
PTT
Mhm.
thing. Yeah, yeah, cute.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Censor her.
wonderful.
I
It's
mean, what the
wonderful that
hell?
they're
Why would
calling
you
up.
let
So,
somebody?
for anybody who hasn't seen, this was posted in the TransPositions Discord. Join if you haven't. All kinds of interesting stuff happens over there. But yeah, Nancy Mace was called out by her fellow committee members for using a slur. And in response, she repeatedly and aggressively used the slur over and over.
Yep.
And other committee members said, maybe we should, like, do something about that. And they decided to take it under consideration because they're not hip with the lingo about what constitutes a slur and what doesn't. So maybe they'll get around to doing something about it someday. Maybe they'll form a subcommittee to further investigate it. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, there's really only two things we can do from where we are here. We can report on what's happening, and we can advise as to what people can do about it. And when it comes to things like what Nancy Mace is up to, or what the NCAA is up to, or what the IOC is up to, there's not much most of us can do. We can write letters, we can call our representatives, we can do that sorts of stuff. We can also donate to organizations who are taking direct action, like the ACLU, GLAD, the Human Rights Committee, to some extent, a few others. Or we can help fundraise for those groups. I mean, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of us in this community are very fucking poor, but we can call attention to the need to help these groups that are doing the direct action because they have the lawyers and the resources and so forth, and give them more resources. It is disheartening, though, because there's one of the downsides of a representative republic is you only get a say every couple of years, and you get to check one box, and that's all the input you get. And even then, it isn't always counted. We're finding out more and more about this last election that between voter roll purges and mail-in ballots not being counted, not to mention whatever the fucking shenanigans Elon got up to in Pennsylvania that Trump was bragging about on national television. That's a whole other issue, though. There were millions and millions of votes that were illegally not counted. And that's just, the vote suppression bullshit that they try every fucking election. Maybe we need a better system, but that's a whole other fight. Getting us back onto what Representative Zephyr was talking about. Carly, I wanted to ask you about one of the orange assholes' recent executive orders was, it had to do with a declaration that he would ban trans women who wanted to come into the United States for the purpose of competing in sports, relating specifically to the Olympics, but in general, he promised he would not grant visas for that purpose. Now, Trump himself can't do anything about the way the Olympics does business. Part of the Olympic contract is that the IOC gets to call the shots, not the local country. But the IOC is changing heads soon. And so I wanted to pick your brain on thoughts about the possible new chairperson, president, whatever the fuck they call their chief executive.
Carl, are you with us?
She wasn't kidding. She is tired.
Yeah, golly.
That is one
I am
soothing kitty.
Yeah, I guess. I think we'll just. Okay. Well, I'm trying to remember the guy who is and if Carly comes back, she can correct me. I'm just trying to remember the guy who is in line, probably the most likely new president of the IOC is going to be the guy who is currently president of World Athletics. and World Athletics was out in the forefront of banning trans women.
Oh,
I
hooray.
don't think, I don't really see anything moving and in a positive direction. And I mentioned before, I was engaged in 2021 and 2022 with World Sailing and U.S. Sailing to develop a policy, and we had good representation. The thing was organized by the president of U.S. Sailing. We had good representation of trans and non-binary people among the participants in the discussions. We got a very close vote for inclusion as a preliminary when we presented our preliminary documents to U.S. Sailing's board, and then it dropped. Because they were waiting for World Sailing to take action. One of the members of our committee was the U.S. representative to World Sailing. And World Sailing didn't want the hot potato, let it drop. So this is how the sausage gets made or gets unmade.
Right.
And it's really not in the world of sports generally, from over the course of the past, the trans women were allowed to compete in the Olympics under hormonal guidelines since, I believe, 2004. I think that quadrennium. No problems.
Mm-hmm.
Never a problem. Never an issue. In the entire in the four quads, 16 years in 4 quads that eligibility was there. Only two out trans people qualified for a national team. One competed at the Olympics, and she didn't make a qualifying lift. She was a weightlifter. She didn't make the qualifying lift, so she didn't even compete in Tokyo.
Yeah.
So it's a solution in search of a problem. There was no problem. There is no problem. As Representative Zephyr said, there is no problem. But you make it a problem, and it's a problem, and it's not just affecting, as was made abundantly clear, it's not just affecting trans women. It's affecting all women.
Mm-hmm.
All women.
Not that should be necessary for people to take it seriously, but yeah, this actually is putting everyone's daughters in danger, not just the trans daughters, the cis ones too, because there's coaches, there's teachers, there's administrators, everybody that we see report after report of all these people being arrested regularly for doing naughty stuff involving children now have a semi-legitimate excuse to say to a 12-year-old, show me your genitals. This is dangerous ground, folks.
Indeed it is. And it's a throwback. It's actually a throwback because prior to 2004, the testing that was done for eligibility, these are all eligibility questions. This is how it's seen in sport, right? These are eligibility questions. You are eligible to compete in this event because of you either qualified for it or you blah 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 blah. You've checked the boxes, and one of the boxes you check is sex. If you're in a segregated in a sex separated format. So the testing went. It went from, in the real early days, genital inspection, where you would strip in front of a panel of men, to demonstrate, be put on a little show. I mean, pretty bad. Started there, went to buccal smears and karyotype testing. Didn't work because it was catching. It's expensive, catches false positives. You know, it just sucked. So they got down to hormone levels, and you know, working through that whole thing, and still in those 16 years of eligibility to trans people, one of them being a guy, did not compete at the Olympics, but made him national team. Now that's, you know, that's the distinction. So
not to mention, there have been a number of cis women who don't have intersex conditions or anything. They're just vanilla flavored cis women who have been unable to compete because they naturally had too high of a testosterone level. Like it hasn't done a damn thing to prevent trans people from competing unfairly or what the fuck ever, but it has kept cis women out. Now there is there's doping regulations on the men's side, but
there's doping regulations on the women's side too.
I'm just getting at that, like you don't get disqualified for having a naturally elevated testosterone level on the men's side. That's a problem that only the women have.
Correct.
And it's incredibly stupid on so many levels. And every time, no matter what it is, people try to implement to keep trans people out, it hurts cis women. Every single thing.
And it's, you know, it's definitely rooted in misogyny and rooted in all of this stuff, and it's rooted in, you know, basically guys telling women how to woman.
Yeah,
it's just it's garbage. It's hot stinking garbage. So anyway,
yeah.
Aside from that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Right.
Yeah, you know, and here's the drill. This story dropped yesterday in the context of all these executive orders and stuff. And a Justice Department lawyer, Chris Geidner, wrote this. Law dork. It's a great follow, by the way, Chris Geidner. A Justice Department lawyer on Tuesday afternoon insisted that even if President Donald Trump's executive order seeking to bar transgender people from the military was motivated by animus, the Pentagon should still be allowed to implement it. The Justice Department is arguing that if the president doesn't like the cut of your jib, he can fire you, exclude you. I mean, think about applying that to any other category of people. Oh,
well,
you're
I think
Jewish?
that's what he's pushing for.
You know, come on.
Yeah, I think that's the general direction he's pushing for. Like we've been saying for a very long time, going after trans people is just the foot in the door to knocking down other civil rights. I mean, when they talk about going back to the good old days, we know what they're talking about. They've openly said in order to bring back the 50s, you have to repeal the 60s. And it was in that time period when you could technically be in the military and black, but you could only do it in black specific units because those dangerous subhumans can't be in the same operational group as white people. And women couldn't be in combat at all. And all of that shit. That's what they want. The fact that this creates the possibility for divisions and the exclusion of specific subgroups, that's the goal.
Yep.
We're just the political hot potato du jour.
Yeah, well.
It's another good reason to support trans people, because as long as we're here being a bulwark, we're at least slowing down the progress against all the other groups.
Yeah, well, that's true, but I think they're really trying to bulldoze their way past us into something else. But as you've seen, it's extremely trying for all of us. We're trying to maintain. Carly's just absolutely knackered. She's just really asleep. And like I said, this is going to be a bit of a show. It may be a very short show because I know Ember needs to get her sleep for things coming up, and I don't think Carly's going to be around. she's out for the
I'm
evening.
envious of Carly because I had another one of my 3 a.m. start days, and I've got to get up early again tomorrow. And like, I really wanted to be here today, though, partly because I know there's so much difficulty with everybody's got everything going on, partly because my own mental health is not in a great place. And the fact I have the spoons to be here today is I want to do it,
Well, I sure appreciate it, and please, everybody out there in the audience, please do understand this is a very, very hard time for all of us, and I'm sure for many of you as well, because again, these issues do not just affect us; they affect all of society. When you look at what's going on and look at the way things are being approached, as I said, that's why I wanted to bring up this hearing that 2 judges. The Justice Department is saying if the president doesn't like you, president doesn't like Hispanics, doesn't like Algerians, doesn't like
Muslims,
anything,
Catholics,
Muslim, yeah, and it's based out of sheer animus, sheer hatred. Doesn't matter. The agencies enforce those bans. Yeah, make America great again. Let's have those lunch counters separate again. Let's have those water fountains separate again. Sheer bigotry is enough. On the part of one man, that's enough. Elon Musk on Twitter says in a tweet, the U.S. needs to open its immigration to more white South Africans only.
Mm-hmm.
So again,
especially
it's
if
not,
they'll put on the funny hat and wear the funny armband.
Yeah. So bear with us, hang with us, stand with us, help us,
and stay with us out of fucking spite if you need to, but don't let those assholes get the better of you.
Illegitimately non carborundum. Don't let the bastards grind you down. Yeah. So anyway, I guess this would be a good time, Ember, to let you get off to Betty Bye, and we'll roll your tape, and I'll be back a little bit later just to wrap up the show. And I really so much appreciate everybody being here and joining us every week. We in this fire hose of executive orders and legislation and all, no legislation. That's what we need, is legislation countering this stuff.
It'd be a good start.
And there may be signs of life in the Democratic Party in both houses of Congress, given that Musk and his 19-year-old sidekicks are trying to get everybody's bank records out of the Treasury Department. That is kind of an attention-getting thing. So we'll see.
Indeed. More news to follow.
All right. Any final thoughts? What do you got coming up before we let you go?
Trying not to die. The only thing slotted for sure is the debate review over on my channel, Better Than Ember. As many people in the community know, I do debate reviews every other week. They're on my channel. This week we've got a new one coming up that friends of the community, Grayson and Eric from Planet Peterson, we're engaged with a surprisingly open-minded apologist and then another guy. And so yeah, we're gonna review some of that stuff. That's over on my channel at 8 p.m. on Saturday.
Cool. Also on Saturday, of course, I want to plug Breeze live from the Hive.
Hell yeah!
At what? That's 10:30 Eastern, I think.
I believe so. That's traditionally when it starts.
Yeah, 10:30
Although the time
Eastern,
zone changed. Who knows? But yeah,
whatever. Yeah. But
yeah.
here we go. We're gonna roll your little thing here, and let me just get the old little interim thing going on here.
Woohoo! Transitions.
Yeah, transitions. See, this is what show more. I need more. Yeah, there we go.
Chair dancing.
We'll see ya.
Transness has only been around for 29 years. Okay, baby boy, let's play. The US's earliest known trans advocacy group was in 1895, nearly 130 years ago. It was called the Circle of Hermaphroditos. Now, 130 years still isn't very long into human history, but it sure as hell trumps your 29 years. So let's go back a little further and leave the US. In Italy, in the early 1800s, we see the appearance of the word femminillo. A femminillo described a person who was assigned male at birth, who lived their life out as a woman and got married to men as a woman. But why don't we take it 400 years earlier than that? In the 1400s in Albania, we get the word bernesho, which describes someone who was assigned female at birth and wore male clothing and was a masculine person for the rest of their life. Let's go back 400 years earlier than that, to the 1200s. In Egypt, a group of people known as the Mamluk would recognize female porn people with masculine traits and then dress them up as sons for the rest of their lives, and they would be treated as men with male privileges and have wives. But let's go back 1600 years earlier than that, in 400 BCE! In ancient Greece, there were people who lived androgynously as prophets and healers, and they were called the Enrai people. But let's go back even earlier than that, to as early as 7000 BCE. Dating back to the oldest ancient history we have, we see depictions of people who either contain characteristics of both sexes or neither. And pretty much every region of the world with native peoples has a word for it in their culture. Dating back so far, we don't even know where it started. In indigenous Siberia, we get the word chuchi, which means trans or genderqueer. Mexico, with the early Zapotec and Oaxacan people, we get the muxe. We're called the Bakla and the Tagalog people of the Philippines. They're commonly called the sister girls and brother boys of Aboriginal Australia. There's quite literally hundreds of different names across Native American tribes. We now put that under the blanket term two-spirited, but of course respect anyone who identifies as something closer to their tribe. In South Asia, they were called the Hijra. And now you may be thinking, well, that's only a couple of peoples across world history. No, it's frickin' not! Because I only have so much time here, I chose random dates from history, but there are so many groups of people with so many names for genderqueer, trans, even drag queens, non-binary, everything. They've been here the whole entire time! Here's the other thing, they never go away. They just go into hiding when someone threatens to hurt them. And that's what's happening before our very eyes in the US, and that's what we need to be stopping. Because the history of gender queerness is the history of humanity itself. Anyone trans watching this, please remember that in the earliest history, you would have been celebrated. You would have been considered a shaman, a religious leader. People would have looked up to you because you understood both sexes. So your ancestors are looking down on you and going, "Go, little rock star." So yeah, kid, I have done my research. Have you?
Good news, everyone! Tonight, survival tips. Trump gets schooled, ongoing rallies for trans rights, and more. Good news starts right now. Things are changing fast in the US, and the odds that you are going to need to defend yourself are increasing rapidly. Most important, there's the same rule number one as in Zombieland. Cardio. If you can get away, do that. It's by far the safest. If you can't, like if you're cornered or they're faster, give them what they want. If they're after money or something that won't physically harm you, just hand it over. No stuff is worth your life. Stay alive first and foremost. If they're out to hurt you, and you have to fight back, remember your only priority is to get away. So try and keep your head and disarm, disable, and escape. If they're barehanded, unless you're trained to fight, they've probably got the advantage. The obvious suggestion is aim for the groin. Because it's the obvious move, it's also easy to predict though, so it has a lower likelihood of success. In the old days, people would fight dirty, frequently jabbing thumbs into eyeballs, pulling testicles off, or crushing them. If you can manage these, they're extremely effective, often reducing your attacker to a mealing pile. A caution though, if you try to inflict permanent damage like that and fail, your attacker could become enraged and hurt you much worse than originally intended. Sometimes that doesn't matter, but other times it does, so try to keep a clear head and think tactically. I do not recommend carrying a knife for self-defense. Unless you've trained to fight with one, the odds are high your attacker will take it away from you and use it against you. If you do carry something, go for a spray or stun device, preferably with range. That said, there are tools available to be more effective in a fight. Many people have said it, but it bears repeating. Putting your keys between your fingers gives you a small improvised weapon, and wrapping your fingers around a key fob or something similar is the next best thing to brass knuckles. In the old days, we'd use a roll of quarters. The extra support makes it far less likely that you'll break a bone when hitting as hard as you can. If they attempt a chokehold, depending on position, sometimes you can bend over and flip them off of you. If that isn't an option, go for the groin with the appropriate arm. You can also try stomping on the arch of their foot, but that's a low probability move. Aiming at a target behind your back while you're being choked is hard. A much better possibility is to go limp and drop to the ground. That's unexpected and may break the hold right there. Failing that, they'll follow you to the ground and be in a much less maneuverable position. You can try for a leg sweep, though again, if you haven't trained, the odds of it working aren't good. A better option might be a swift strike to the side of the knee. It only takes 15 pounds of force to blow out a knee joint from the side, well within range for an average kick. If you can get the angle, a side hand strike to the Adam's apple can cause them to lose their wind, incapacitating them long enough to get away. If you're caught in a stranglehold, you may have a hard time breaking the grip or pulling the hands away. Instead, try to use your legs for leverage, changing the angle if you can. If you have to deal with the grip itself, try to dig your thumbs into the inner arm area just above the wrist. That's where a lot of tendons are, and if you can bruise them, it'll make it a lot harder to maintain that grip. If they use a hammerlock, pulling your arm up behind your back, there are a few different moves you can use. The key is to be aware that the lock is putting pressure on your shoulder, So if you step to the side being held, it'll free up just a little bit of flex. From there, you can try to get one leg behind one of theirs and attempt a scissor to knock them down and break the hold that way. If they weigh a lot more than you, though, that might not work. Another option is reach up and behind with your free arm, get that arm around their neck, and drop. That will bring them with you, protecting your joint and giving you the room to move and get out of the hold. If you want to learn more about hand-to-hand defense, I recommend taking a class. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is especially useful at effective ways to break out of holds. Most of all, remember your ultimate priority is to get away. Whatever it takes, stay alive. Next, Trump's executive order demanding discrimination rejected by schools nationwide. From Aaron in the Morning, on Thursday, multiple school systems around the United States released advisories stating that Trump's executive order mandating discrimination in schools will not be followed. On Thursday, multiple school systems and representatives issued statements rejecting Trump's executive order that directs schools to discriminate against transgender students or face legal consequences. The order, which was released last Wednesday, labels transgender identity as an anti-American ideology and mandates discrimination in bathrooms and locker rooms while threatening teachers with criminal charges for supporting trans students' social transitions. In response, school officials across the country are making it clear they will not comply, and they remain committed to protecting the rights of their transgender students. On Thursday, Julie Yang, president of the Montgomery County Board of Education in Maryland, issued a forceful response to Trump's executive order in a mass email to families. Representing a school district of 160,000 students, Yang affirmed that Montgomery County would continue to recognize gender identity as a protected characteristic. Quote, "We stand by our community and school system values, which include learning, relationships, respect, excellence, and equity. They guide us every day and anchor us when navigating difficult times. We intend to use all legal means necessary to uphold them. We are committed to maintaining local authority over our curriculum, teaching, and learning. We will fiercely support our teachers and staff as they implement our curriculum and policy." Harrisonburg City Public Schools Superintendent Michael Richards also issued a strong response to Trump's executive order. The district was one of 3 specifically named in the order for its policies supporting transgender students. In his statement, Richards pushed back forcefully, saying, quote, "The claims in their statement are false. We do not have a policy that violates anyone's rights or indoctrinates children. What we do have is a culture of respect, one that honors the dignity and diversity of all students, families, and educators." San Francisco Unified School District also responded to Trump's executive order, affirming that it would continue to embrace its diversity as a core strength. Quote, "This includes our district's trans-identified students and all of our LGBTQ+ students and families," the statement read. The district made clear that its core values would not change, emphasizing its commitment to supporting all students' rights, including, quote, "addressing students using the name and pronoun that reflects who they are, and providing access to school activities, spaces such as locker rooms and restrooms, and gender-neutral dress codes that fit with their gender identity." Superintendent John Thean, in an email to parents of the St. Paul's Public School District, reaffirmed the district's commitment to, quote, "respect, affirm, and welcome all students, staff, and family members." He emphasized that the district would continue supporting students regardless of their minority status, explicitly including gender identity and sexual orientation. Thean closed the message with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., underscoring the district's stance on equity and inclusion. Columbus City Public Schools in Ohio, a state that has already heavily targeted transgender students before Trump's executive orders, delivered its own fierce message of resistance. In an interview with the Columbus Dispatch, Michael Cole, president of the school district, called Trump's order a challenge and defiantly stated, quote, "Bring it on." He emphasized that the school district has a strong infrastructure in place to support its students. Meanwhile, Scott DeMoro, president of the Ohio Education Association, condemned the order as an attempt to, quote, "instill fear and sow division in a way that it is intended to try to stop educators from teaching the truth." As Trump's executive orders take effect, the greatest immediate threat isn't their legality. It's premature compliance before they can be challenged in court. Most of these orders function more as a legal intimidation tactic than enforceable law, relying on the chilling effect of DOJ threats to pressure hospitals, teachers, and institutions into abandoning transgender people before the legal process even begins. But resistance is already mounting. These school districts and others recognize the stakes and are refusing to fold, standing firm in their commitment to protect transgender students who lack the institutional power to fight back on their own against an administration determined to erase them. In other words, that is what supporting your community looks like. Next, rallies for trans rights continue around the world. Today, Brazil and Colorado. On January 29th, Brazil's Trans Day of Visibility, a group of trans individuals gathered in front of the United States Embassy in Brasilia to protest against the dangerous statements and marginalizational policies of President Donald Trump against the transgender community. In interviews, protesters said, quote, "When a president, upon taking office, labels a social group as the enemy of a nation," which is what he did, "it has an echo not only in the United States, but around the world. And it wasn't just speeches, but decrees and declarations. This is the start of a policy to distance trans people within American society." Another protester said, "For the world, the message is that here in Brazil, we will not allow this type of policy to take hold again. We have been ranked for 14 years as the country that kills the most transgender people. We will have to focus on mental health because unfortunately, a small comment can cost a life. We're fighting to reinstate hate speech protections. The problem is because so many companies are so very big and active globally that the influence of American politics is reflected across the entire internet." They went on to say, "We continue to ask our government to fight for protections online against racism, transphobia, misogyny, violence, and crime." As communities across the United States continue to rally over concerns with some of the new actions by the Trump administration, including direct threats against the LGBTQ+ community, a coalition of Colorado Springs activists held a rally to march for transgender rights. One attendee, Cheyenne Demure, said, quote, "It's scary to me because I know how many are going to end up unaliving themselves because they don't think they're safe anymore." Other members of the GSM community say they are living in fear of the Trump administration. Quote, "We are gathering here today to raise objection to President Trump's executive orders that target and attack trans individuals for being who they are, for their identities as LGBTQ+ people," said Joseph, who is an event organizer. Kiera Kelly, another event organizer, said, quote, "This community is definitely feeling fear. A lot of people are scared, nervous, not exactly sure what to expect." The Colorado Springs event took place at Acacia Park to serve as a statement of solidarity, demanding protections for transgender people. Quote, "We're gathering together to say that we're here. We're supporting our trans siblings, making sure that their voice is being heard and they're welcome in our community, and that they're not going to fight through this alone. They have people standing beside them who are wanting to make a change," Joseph said. During this time of uncertainty, members of the Colorado Springs GSM community have one united message. The youth are our future. They have the right to be exactly who they are, and we have to respect them. Organizers also want to spread the reminder that anyone struggling can call 988 within the United States for immediate help. And additional protests are expected across the United States this coming weekend. Next, an update on the transgender prisoner who filed suit against the Trump administration over the executive order concerning prisons. A U.S. judge has temporarily blocked federal prison officials from transferring a transgender woman to a men's facility and denying her access to gender-affirming care, in accordance with the executive order issued by President Donald Trump, her lawyers said on Thursday. The temporary restraining order was issued by U.S. District Judge George O'Toole in Boston on Sunday, while the inmate's case was sealed, in what appears to be the first lawsuit challenging an order Trump signed on January 20th, his first day back in office, targeting what he called gender ideology extremism. Trump's order directed the federal government to, among other things, house transgender women in men's prisons and cease funding for any gender-affirming medical care for inmates. The lawsuit, filed the following Sunday by the inmate known by the pseudonym Maria Mo, was soon after sealed. O'Toole, an appointee of Democratic President Bill Clinton, lifted the seal on Thursday as a hearing was underway on whether he should grant her further relief. Her case was filed by lawyers at two GSM rights groups, including LGBTQ Legal Advocates and Defenders, or GLAD, which, after the case was unsealed, confirmed that O'Toole had on Sunday issued a temporary restraining order that will remain in place while he considers whether to issue a longer-lasting injunction. The judge's order requires prison officials to keep the inmate in the general population in a women's facility and maintain her medical care, GLAD said. Jennifer Levi, a lawyer for the inmate at GLAD, called it a relief her client is, quote, staying put for now. Judge O'Toole is still considering whether to issue a longer preliminary injunction. 3 other transgender women in prison filed a similar lawsuit on Thursday in Washington, D.C., also challenging Trump's policy directives. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston declined to comment. Mo's lawyers said that a day after Trump signed his order, officials with the Federal Bureau of Prisons informed her that she was being transferred from a women's prison to a men's facility, exposing her to an, quote, extremely high risk of harassment, abuse, violence, and sexual assault. It should be noted that statistics have been collected on incidents affecting transgender women, particularly with regards to sexual assault and worse, and 88% of trans women who are housed in men's facilities are assaulted. Mo's lawyers said that the Bureau of Prisons switched how it publicly identified her from female to male, and had been poised to cut off the inmate's access to hormones she has taken since she was a teenager to treat her gender dysphoria. Her lawyers argued that Trump's executive order discriminated based on sex in violation of the plaintiff's due process rights under the U.S. Constitution's Fifth Amendment. It should also be noted, as previously reported on the Transpositions, this violates a number of other laws, including the Eighth Amendment protection against cruel and unusual punishment. As the case continues to move through the courts, at least Mo is relatively safe for now. If you enjoy content like this, be sure to subscribe. TransPositions Weekly is the first and only weekly trans news show in the universe, and we need your support to keep this show going. Contribute at patreon.com/TheTransPositions. Spread the word all over social media to let people know we're here, and tell us what stories matter to you by joining the community on Discord. Discord, of course, is where the memes live, and our meme of the week was posted by Jester. And if you want human rights for all humans shoved down your throat, join us. Also, if you have good news concerning trans people you'd like to see reported on, you can tell us about that in the Discord as well. For the Transpositions, I've been Ember Belrad.
Just like Thursday, the boat in trouble. This time, Nomura was able to wriggle off the hook with 1:30 to go, and now they hold a favored position. We're not going to have it. They call to each other. Game here is to get up to full speed. KR makes his move first, and he'll be going faster when the gun goes off. Go down below the line. 20. 17. 14. 13. 4, 3, 2, 1, shot! Another clean start and another good job by Dellenbaugh.
Wait. Wait. There we go. Bad production values. Flying solo at the moment. Carly is still fast asleep. Again, as we started out the show, a number of us are way out of spoons. So I'm not going to have too much more to say. Except I'll say this. One of my comfort reads is The Lord of the Rings. Okay, so I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd. So I've been reading or rereading for the umpteenth time, The Scouring of the Shire. And that's the bit that wasn't in the movies. For those of you who only know Tolkien's Legendarium from the movies, you won't have seen this. But the hobbits get back to the Shire after getting rid of the ring and all of that stuff, and they find that it's been taken over by a bunch of ruffians led by Saruman the White, once upon a time, the great wizard. And it's become a hellscape. The residents are all just sort of cowed and terrified and just sort of sleepwalked into becoming their own oppressors. And what it took was a little spark. People standing up to say, this is garbage. This is bullshit. We're not going to let this happen. And as difficult as it is, that's what we all need to be doing right now. Whether it's finding protests, whether it's contacting your senators and congressmen, following the progress of legal challenges. The Trump Justice Department right now is 0 for 6 with these orders, with these executive orders. 0 for 6. Temporary injunctions being slapped on, all of this stuff. So at the moment, we do have the third branch of the government working to throw a monkey wrench into what is a fast-moving coup against constitutional democracy in the United States of America. We also saw Canada and Mexico basically forcing Trump to back off a bit. Every medium, every piece of leverage that we have needs to be engaged. On January 30th, 1933, a man with a significant minority following in one of Europe's most dynamic nations took office. In a constitutional republic. And he started putting in executive orders, and he started putting in directions, both to his party's paramilitary and the nation's military, to take action against degeneracy. And in the 4 months from the 30th of January till the 6th of May, these actions were pushed forward to the point that on the 6th of May, paramilitary organizations broke into the Institute for Sexual Research in Berlin, took the library out and burned it on the street. Now, I said before that everything that's happening now, they told you they were going to do this. And they're saying now that what they're trying to do is throw everything, flood the zone. They're taking Saul Alinsky's work, Rules for Radicals, and switching it up to right-wing purposes. And now it's time for monkey wrenching. Whatever leverage you have, use it. And please, if you have trans friends, support them now. They're hurting. I'm hurting. Amber's hurting. Carly's asleep. This is exhausting. But the good news is, some of us have lived through pretty bleak times before. And in those times, we've persevered. And we will persevere. And we will overcome. For the Transpositions, I'm Stephanie Helms, and I hope you'll come back next week when hopefully we'll have some more energy, perhaps, and maybe even some better news. In the meanwhile, stay strong, stay alive, keep hope alive. We love you.